Okay, whoops. Let me fix this. Sorry. Okay. Trying to make all this straight. Okay. Um, I hope this screen's not too dark. Okay, there we go. So, let me see if I can get myself a little bit higher so you can actually see me better. Okay. Now, welcome. I have Facebook and Instagram recording at the same time. So if I look back and forth, it's because there's two of you. So this is going to be, first I want to say I'm sorry because I said I was going to do this at 11 and it's 11:30 Central Time. So I had a little something get in the way in the morning, but we're here now. And I leave all of my lives permanently so you can always replay it. So you can come back and watch us later if you have to. But this is going to be about the insight that the narcissist can give you about yourself. So what that means is, of course, I go over this in my course too, because this is probably, it's not probably, no, it is. This is the biggest part about your dynamic between you and whoever you're involved with. You know, there's the reason that person is in your life and the lessons that they are there to show you is huge because they're teaching you about yourself. And I know people will say, well, you know, everything's just a mirror. This is kind of like that, but I don't like to say that per se. I don't like to apply that to everything because I don't like to simplify things all the time like that. Some shit is that simple, but sometimes it's not. So, and that can be really misconstrued, and people can really screw themselves up thinking that they're being shown a mirror. They might confuse that somehow, and that's not always the best advice, I don't think. But I think that when the narcissist comes into your life, they are there because, number one, they're looking for something that they see in you, and they just can't help themselves. But also, they're there because they have a particular wound, mother or father wound, or whichever, you know, they've got something where they're hurting. They're coming from some point of pain. And they come to you because they see that same point of pain, that same pain point in you. It's there. And people don't realize that, you know, just like I said in that post, I probably pissed off a lot of people, to be honest, but like, yeah, that's why I'm here, you know. But that's why it has to be said. It's because people will say, well, you know, I'm an empath, and people love empaths, like, because we're so dreamy, and you know, our vibes are so good, and you know, whatever, and you know, they're drawn to me. They're drawn to me. You know, it's like they just love me. Well, probably. I'm not saying that's not true. It probably is true. You know, I'm not doubting you, but my point is that you may need to do a little bit of soul searching to find out what you might be doing wrong, quote unquote wrong, that's also attracting them, because it's not always about they just love your vibes. You know, there's people that love my vibes too, and they're not necessarily narcissists, but they just, you know, can't leave me alone, and that's fine. But you know, with somebody who has serious, we're talking about people that have a serious mental diagnosis, and those people aren't just looking for good vibes. You know, there's a lot more to it, and they are wounded in some way or another that hasn't been figured out yet. And because they haven't figured that out, because in their reality they can do no wrong, so they subconsciously, they still have that issue, and they're still like searching for the solution or the match or whatever, and they come to you because you also have a similar issue or wound, and y'all just, you know, you also do this, but you're doing this too at the same time, and that's a really complicated dynamic. But one example could be, let's say two people have not a good, relationship with their mother or something like that, not like what it should have been. Um, and both their mothers were kind of distant, um, didn't really get close to their children or whatever. And those children will grow up, and one of them will be desperate to replace that, what was lost. Oh my God, I got to get that bond. I got to get it with somebody. I got to get with somebody. Who am I going to have that with? And he's going to look for mommy. He's going to look for mommy. Um, and, with women, it's usually, unless they're dating women, they may do that, but for the most part, if you're looking at dudes, you may not have a closeness with your mother, for the same reasons. But instead, you shut down that part of yourself, and you can't get close to women, or you don't have, good female friends or what have you. And you're putting off the vibe of not being emotionally available, because that's your way of protecting yourself. Because so many of us do that, oh, well, I'll be damned if this hurts me, I just won't fucking get involved, and that's horrible, but that's what people do. A lot of people do that. I have been known to do that. So I know when I see it in somebody else, especially, but since you've got one person who screwed up with the mother thing and another person who screwed up with the mother thing, the reason he's seeking you out is because he is subconsciously still attracted to the distant motherly love, or the distant feminine love. You know what I'm saying? And he sees that in you and just latches on like a leech, because he's looking for what's familiar, and you're doing it. And he just can't help himself, because you're just like mommy. And y'all fight and argue and bump heads and all kinds of shit over all kinds of things. And, you just can't figure it out. And it's subconsciously, you're putting out the vibe, and also in your behavior and what you say and how you carry yourself and everything else. You're putting it out there that, you're not available emotionally. You're not available emotionally. And he sees what feels like home. And he's just going to dive right in, because that's what he knows. Because his mom screwed up so much with him by not knowing what to do with him. Just as an example, there's a million different ways this could go, but that's an example that I have experienced myself. That's why I'm telling it. And when they come into your life, they show you that, and they'll show you it 20 million times until you finally say, you know what the question you have to ask yourself is, what do me and this asshole have in common? No one says that. No one ever thinks about that. What do me and this clown actually have in common? And men especially, even when their mothers are messed up, they may not always realize it, or they may not always put stock in that. Like a lot of times, when their mothers are not close to them, or what have you, they'll still like hold her in high regard, because that's mommy. Especially if the parents are divorced, and obviously they're going to grow up with the mother for the most part. He learns to latch on to her whether she's distant or not, because the child's gonna kind of do that anyway. But let's say in his case, he's like that, and there's a part of him that's looking for those gaps where he didn't get loved to be filled in. He's looking for that. There's a part of him that's looking for that, because it needs that love, because that child didn't get the bond it should have had with the mother. So it's always going to be that child part of him that's like, well, it'd be great if somebody could just love me like my mom should have. And a lot of people feel that way, and that's not weird. It's not backwards. There's nothing wrong about that. That's actually pretty normal, because the things that happen to you when you're 5 or 10, I tell you what, the shit will stay with you forever. You have no idea. It's just, you wouldn't believe how much that affects you when you're 35, It's just, it's nuts. But he's going to look for that. But if his conscious mind is steering the, like making all the decisions, he's going to think to himself, okay, well, I want somebody who's going to be who I can, look up to, like mommy, or what have you. And one of them might even be watching my video at some point and say, oh, well, this is a bunch of bullshit, I don't. But the narcissist doesn't know they're a narcissist either, because they think they're perfect. So anything you tell them like this, even if you ever figured all this out and like broke it down right in front of them, they would just say, no, 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 no. Well, you can't. That's why you can't fix those people, because they have an actual diagnosis. That's a serious mental condition. Because there's a lot of women that'd be like, well, I can fix it. No, you can't fix him. You can't fix him. There is no fixing him. So, but that's what I mean about people, just coming to each other, or you'll have two people that just have like major issues, and the issues might seem different, or they'll manifest differently because each person's going to deal with it differently, right? So they'll both have, big problems, but they'll just act different about it. But if you go back and look and just kind of like go to the source and sort of simplify a little bit. I don't want to say water it down, but that's like the best phrase I can come up with. But if you just kind of go back and just kind of filter it down and get down to the bottom of it with each person, you can see they're actually really similar, and they're actually really coming from damn near the same pain point. It's weird how that works. In one of my videos I talked about, on YouTube, I talked about wounded masculine. And I used to attract the ones, here and there, not very often. Not maybe like once or twice. I had, because I definitely have wounded masculine for sure. I got wounded both, but attracted somebody that had wounded masculine just as serious as mine was, if not worse. And he was just in denial of it, just totally in denial. And no matter what I said, no matter what I figured out, no matter what math I did to figure it out and see it, right in front of me, and I would say, look, we're doing this because you're feeling this way because this, and this, according to the stories you've told me about your upbringing, you went through this, and this, and I went through and here we are arguing over some shit because I'm thinking of it this way because I'm coming from this and you're coming from that, and we think we're different, and really we're not. And I used to get pissed off at myself when I'd realize that me and him had more in common than I wanted to admit to. I hated that. That would make me so mad. I was like, fuck. Like, I do that too. Like, I hated that because I didn't want to be like him. But we had that in common. We both came from skewed views or skewed opinions of what masculine was supposed to be. We both he was raised by women, so he just kind of assumed and didn't have any healthy man around at all, according to him, according to his stories. So there was no decent example set for him, period, at all, going by what he said. And I could tell. And I didn't have the best example. My dad had his rough edges, but he meant well, but he had some rough edges, and he was hostile. And so I didn't necessarily have, for a long time, a good viewpoint or idea of what, a man was supposed to be like, because I always thought that they, would come home angry, and that they were angry all the time, because that's what I saw growing up. Oh, well, hell, they're pissed off all the time. This is going to be my life. This is going to be my life. And I just assumed that because had never seen anything else. And then I'll never forget, this is good. I'll never forget, for as long as I live, the first time I went to my best friend's house at the time when I was 9 years old. We went to school together. And I went to her house after school for some odd reason. I got off at her bus stop, and we were at her house in her kitchen. And her dad came in from work like 4 o'clock or 5, whatever. And he came in the kitchen and was like getting a drink or something. And he was real happy-go-lucky and just bouncy and shit, And I didn't know if we were like filming a movie and I didn't know about it or something like that, because that wasn't reality to me at all. I don't know if we had just like been transported, or, because I thought, what the hell, you know, and even at 9 years old, that probably was my exact thought, what the hell. And he was just delighted to be alive, and I just thought, what the fuck, I've never seen this before. I had seen like maybe little minuscule glimpses of it here and there from other men, maybe at my father's office or something, or, just a little tiny bit, but nothing influenced me. Nothing caught my attention like that guy did. And he got his drink or whatever and left the kitchen and went to go sit in front of the TV or whatever. And I looked at my friend. We were sitting at like this little breakfast table in the kitchen. And I said, is he always like that? And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, he's so happy. She's like, hell yeah. What do you mean? And I said, oh, I don't know. It's just weird. Like like my brain, it didn't compute. It just didn't. And my brain couldn't accept it, that there was a man that was happy. He didn't come home yelling. And I just had never been exposed to that before. I thought, what the hell? And I just remember the shock and the sheer confusion, just utter confusion. Like my reality just went, turned upside down. And that was, 25 years ago. And I still remember that, I like it was last week. That was so bizarre. I don't think it's bizarre now, because as I've gotten older, I've seen that most men aren't violent, not that bad anyway. Most of them don't, they come in tired, but they don't come in yelling, at 6 o'clock. So, I learned that what I had at home was not quite typical, was not normal, or was different, or that there were other scenarios that were different. I thought, well, they're not all the same. What? Because I didn't know. So I had a screwed up viewpoint too for a long time. And even though as soon as I started dating, like I was out all the time. So I saw all these different personalities, and I was like, oh, my dad's just different. He's angry. Oh, okay. And then once I accepted that, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I dated all the time. I was always gone out of the house, because like I didn't want to be at home because everybody was so miserable. And I stayed gone. I wasn't even doing anything bad. Like I wasn't, out partying, shooting up and stuff like that. There was nothing outrageous going on. I just didn't want to go home. We would just drive up and down the ocean front and shit like that, just watch people and whatever, and just drive up and down the boulevard. There wasn't, at 2 a.m, we weren't old enough to drink or go to bars. So it's not that that was ever my scene. Even now it wouldn't be, but I wasn't doing anything that was going to get me in trouble. Just stayed gone. But so we both, me and this guy I'm talking about, both had, screwed up views of what men were supposed to be. And one time I said, he when we first met, he had bragged to me about being in his feminine, which is never good. You don't ever want to hear that. Unless he's into dudes, and just let it go. And if he is, so be it. But, let him. But, I mean, if he says he's into chicks, but also says that he's, really in his feminine, you got to watch that, because you have to figure out what that means. Because if he's in his feminine, where does that leave you? If you're both going to be soft and receptive and sit back and just kind of like, wait for things to happen. And, if you're both waiting for the other one to do something, just forget it. But that's what we did. He was always waiting for me to do something, wait for me to make a decision, wait for me to start a conversation, wait for me. So I was like, well, shit, I guess I'll be the man. Let me take initiative and make decisions, and, and everything else. And that was so hard, because especially as a single parent, I'm tired of that. And I get tired of having to be both people that I need. I'm tired of having to be the person I need all the time, I got to be my own shoulder to cry on and things like that. That gets old. But I can't get on that right now. We gotta save that for another time. So, but, so his viewpoint of masculine, he revealed to me, was, well, I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to be a bossy, pushy asshole. I don't want to be, an aggressive asshole. And those were his. I remember hearing that, and I said, that's why you're in your feminine, as it were, is because you think that being a man means being an aggressive asshole, when it doesn't. A lot of them are, yeah, because they're uptight about whatever. So am I, but he thought that that's what that meant, to be a man. And I said, no, that's not it, and I said, that's not it. All, I said the basics would be, taking initiative, having clarity about what you want from your life, having some direction, having some investment in yourself in one way or another. It's for, well, everybody should do self-improvement, but, for men to be the leaders, the good leaders that they are meant to be, it requires things like that. Otherwise, just kind of sitting around with life happening around you. And, when you could take charge and make so much more of it, make your life worth it, make it count, make it work for you, make it matter. And men can do so much with their life if they just take initiative. But there's a lot in the way of that, and that's a whole other topic I'd have to get to another time. But that was his viewpoint, and mine was better than his, because I'm aware of those things at least. But for a while there, I had a confused, outlook as well. So like, I understood that. I understood what I was seeing, but the age that he was, he kind of should have known better by that point. But some people don't. They just don't learn, and you just have to accept it. But we came together because we both had skewed viewpoints about certain things, and we were seeing it in each other. I accepted it. I just accepted. I was like, all right, I need to learn from this. Okay, this is it. What do I need to take from this? And I saw that I was, forcing myself to be too masculine and coming at things from what he would call an aggressive, place. And I quit being that way. And I learned a lot of other things. But when people come to you, it's sort of a mirror, but it's a lot of times it's a little bit deeper than that. So don't let people tell you that all the time, because it could be easy to misconstrue that and really screw yourself up when you don't have to. But let me tell you, and each narcissist will take you through a different stage of what you need to know about yourself. Each one that comes into your life will show you a different facet that you need to sand down and polish. And but ultimately, I would say the ultimate lesson, especially like what I said earlier. I don't know if I put it on Instagram yet, but I put it on Facebook, and I said, I quoted a quote that I've heard before, and well, we've all heard this one, but and most men who are not narcissists will really, really, really use this phrase, and it's just real common. It's just real common, but. And I don't hate men. I don't. I don't. I think by the time I was 30, I finally quit hating them. Because my viewpoints about things started really changing then. But I still have to bring to attention the things that are kind of worldwide, and this is one of them. Well, I loved you. I've taken better care of you, and I've treated you better than anybody else ever fucking will. And you fucking know it. That, first of all, that's wrong. There's always going to be somebody that loves me better, and can treat me better than you. And the fact that you think you have to say that is an issue all on its own. But that when they tell you, well, you know, I treated you better than all the rest of them did, you bitch. You know, that is, that's not kosher, and that's not gonna work, and that's not, and it's not true. Most of all, the biggest problem is that that's not true. But when they say that, um, it's dumb. But the lesson that you need to take from hearing that phrase right there is that it's time for you to start learning how to love yourself. I know it's hard to put it in place in your mind when you're in that moment and he says that to you. It's hard to like stop and think, okay, well, this means I have to love myself, because, you know, he's telling me. It's hard to do the psychology on yourself when you're in the moment and y'all are like, you know, clashing. So don't put pressure on yourself to try to think of these things all the time, you know, when things are going wrong, because you're not always going to be able to think of this shit, and that's okay. Do the argument, do the conversation, whatever, get it over with, you know, get it out of the way, and then go off by yourself and think about what was said, think about what you said, and think about what he's showing you, because that's all it is lessons. You know, he can come and go out of your life and be gone and be done with it. You can get rid of him and get that over with and get that out, and just sit with the remnants and just think on it. As Edgar Casey said, think on these things. And that's what you got to do, and just think about what was said. Um, you know, but especially when they say shit like that about love. Well, you know, nobody can fucking love you better than I can, you ungrateful bitch. That, because so many of us have heard that, and not necessarily from a, you know, hardcore diagnosed narcissist, you know, because that's a serious mental condition. But there's men that say the same and do the same kind of shit the narcissist does, and they don't have a diagnosis. It's just how they do. And I don't mean to just, you know, bash that species. But it's just, there's a lot of little bit of commonalities here. But the main difference is that your average man knows if he does screw up, or if he is imperfect, he's aware of it, and they'll just try to hide it with whatever. The narcissist seriously thinks that they can do no wrong. They really think they can do no wrong, which is one of the reasons why they try to change your reality so much. Well, you said blah, blah, blah. I didn't fucking say that. When did I fucking say that? You know, that doesn't even sound like me. Well, you did, because when I said blah, 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 you said... So they're shifting it so that they're not wrong. So they're changing your reality. Which is the real definition behind the term gaslighting. Gaslighting is not a challenge. It's when somebody tries to convince you that what you see or what you hear or what you do is not what you're seeing or hearing or doing. And I've got a little story about that, and I can't help myself. I tell a lot, but it's like it's a good ass story, and it fits in exactly with what I'm telling you. But yeah, that when they start that shit about the, well, no one can love you like I can kind of shit, there are women that listen to that and actually get afraid for a second. In fact, that's a huge part of the reason that they won't break up with these guys. Number one, they think they deserve that kind of treatment because their father screwed them up. I mean, the girl's father, you know, he either wasn't there, or if he was an ass. So there's a lot of that plays into it. So when he can't love you right, and then you're trying to get asshole boyfriends, what it's showing you is that you can love yourself, and you don't need either of them, really. So you don't have to worry about what happens with either of them. But the boyfriend coming into your life and showing you the same old shit that your dad did, you know, that's showing you, you know, where you need to, I don't want to say let it go, because it's not that easy, but when you need to look at yourself and say, you know what, I can love myself better than both these clowns put together ever could in 100 lifetimes. So it doesn't matter what either of them did. And that can help you kind of move through it, you know, and not be hung up on it as much, and not let it dictate your life and manifest in boyfriends until you die. Because we don't want that. So there was another point I was going to make. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you the story. So I had one, the last narcissistic boyfriend I had. It's actually been maybe 6 years. Gosh. Yeah, it's been 6 years. It's been an interesting 6 years, but it has been. Okay, so there he did a handful of things, but the one thing that is prominent in my memory is that he changed our stories so often that he had me convinced at a certain point, which didn't take long because I trusted him instead of my own intuition, because that's how we're raised, to trust what men tell us instead of trust ourselves. And I listened to what he said, and he had me convinced, like through and through, that my memory was failing me at 29. My memory was failing me, and that I couldn't remember conversations we'd had. I couldn't remember things that I had said. I couldn't remember things I'd done. You know, he had me certain that I wasn't remembering shit. Because everything he told me, it was like, no, 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 that's not what you said. It was this. Did you remember? It was, you know, I bought it. So it got to a point where I buckled, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, let's go down to this Rite Aid at the end of the road and pick out some memory vitamins. And he said, okay. And we stood there in that fucking Rite Aid looking at vitamins for memory, because I thought I was losing my damn mind. Because he had me convinced that I couldn't remember, that my memory was failing me. And we were looking at memory vitamins for old people because I thought I was losing my fucking mind. That's how bad it was. And we stood there together like, yeah. You know, that's the kind of control these people have. If you let them. If you let them. Period. And the reason you let them do it is because you're not trusting your own intuition. And you're not trusting your own intuition because you don't know yourself, because you don't know your stories. You know your stories, but you don't know why you have those stories. And you don't know, more importantly, what those stories are doing to you now. Well, I'm like this because this and this happened to me, and that's just how it is. And that's not, there's more to you than that. There's more to you than that. So I'd like to see people like not do that as much. Well, this happened to me, and that's why I'm like this, and that's just how it is, and there's no changing that. And I'm, you know, we got to get rid of that, because that's not helping anybody. And yes, that is the victim status thing. And it's not that you're not a victim. It's not that nothing bad happened to you. Bad things did happen. I believe that. You know, I don't believe people are bullshit me when they message me and tell me, you know, look, blah, 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 blah happened, and now I'm like this. You know, well, yeah, I would be too. Yeah, your defense mechanism or whatever is valid. You know, what you're doing isn't necessarily wrong in that it's natural, and it makes sense that you're doing that now, but you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to be in defense mode anymore. And I learned, that was another thing I learned, you know, that they really brought out in me, because I was in defense mode so badly, and I was really, you know, just had my guard up and stuff like that, and they challenged that, and I thought about it. I thought, you know what? I don't have to be, I can go through life and still protect myself in certain ways and not have to be hypervigilant, you know, because my hypervigilance, especially, well, before the narcissist, but especially after them, was like sky high. And that's not good. Nobody should be that way, but it's especially bad for women, because we're not supposed to have to live that way. Women, especially, the feminine has to be, should be in a safe environment so that it can function and do what it needs to do. And if this environment isn't safe, then she can't do what she needs to do. She's got to be protected in order to do her job, which is, you know, keeping people alive and and showing you how beautiful life can be by letting life be experienced and demonstrated through her. And if there's constant danger, emotionally, energetically, or physically, then that can't happen, and she can't do her job and live her purpose, and then it just all goes to shit. So women that are like always on the lookout for the next danger, or whatever, the next thing where they might get fucked, that's not good. We can't live that way. Women like that are aggravated. A lot of the time they're aggravated, they're exhausted, they're angry a lot, they argue a lot. They're always looking for the next fight and shit like that, like some teenage boy. And that's not, we shouldn't be doing that. That's not normal. And it's not healthy, and that's not what we're meant to do. We're meant to live in beauty and tranquility, and show you how beautiful life can be. And we're meant to transmute things. Look at all the things that women transmute. You give them a seed, they make a baby, they make a whole human. Whoa, look at this. You give them thread, they make clothes. You give them a couple of ingredients, some fucking potatoes and some salt, they make a stew. You give them a little bit of yarn or something, they make a carpet, and whatever. Obviously men can do those things too, but the woman's job is to take something. You put her in a house and she decorates it, makes it a beautiful home, and she cleans it and organizes it, and everything's everything's in its place, and everybody's got a place to sleep, and the tub is scrubbed out, and so there's a good place to bathe, and there's food in the kitchen, and everything's organized. Everybody knows where everything is, because it's all put together. That's her thing. That's her spiel. And the transmutation, that is our biggest thing. You have whatever, and you give it to her, and she just turns it into this, she just turns it into magic. And that's what that is. That's one of our strengths. That's one of the bigger ones. But we haven't been free to do that, for quite a while. And because things are screwed up in society, and we're just living on edge, and we're just like this, and shit, and that's shitty. And that's why we're so aggravated. That's one of the reasons why we're so aggravated. The other reason is we have to do everything by ourselves now. But I can't digress into that. We'll be here all day. So, but like I say, back to the original topic, the narcissist will show you parts of yourself that you need to look at, and they will show you the things that you are drawn to in partners that you need to quit being drawn to, because you need to figure out why you're drawn to that, and make your peace with it. Like, for example, I use my own examples a lot, because obviously I know myself, I know my stories enough that I can use that all I want, and I'm not telling somebody else's private information, whatever. Like, I'm using myself, so I got stories for days. But especially in my case, with growing up with my father being a bit hostile, I was accustomed to that. And even though after a certain point I knew that they weren't all like that, they didn't all come home swinging, but because that was so ingrained in me, it didn't matter. It was already programmed. By the time I was 15, it was programmed. So I didn't like boring boys, I didn't like, well, sort of, but that's not who I kept around. Because girls will do that, especially whatever their father was like. Look, and no one thinks of that. No one thinks to ask that. And I go over this in my course as well. No one ever thinks, because people will say, well, she picks assholes. She doesn't know what she's got something good, blah, blah, blah. She always picks assholes. Why does she always pick assholes? She picks assholes because her dad's an asshole, and that's all she knows. No one asks what her father was like. No one has the fucking insight. And it's the same for dudes. You got men, it's not as bad, and they don't, it's not as bad for them. It's not as common, I suppose. Or maybe it is, and it's like they don't notice it, so they don't complain, which means that no one else notices it. But, they could have shitty dynamics with their mothers from, the time they were born, and they'll turn around and pick shitty ass women. Well, why are you settling for that bitch? She's no good. She, whatever. Well, I don't know. And then he doesn't fucking know. But if you look at what his mom was like and his relationship with her, no matter how good he thinks it might be, there's always going to be something iffy, because nobody's got a perfect relationship with either parent, period. There's always something, because we're humans. And you can look at it and be like, oh, you're picking them because of her and how she programmed you. That makes sense. But no one asks those questions. It's just like no one knows why they pick assholes. And, in my case, with Dad being the way he was, aggressive, I kept around boyfriends that wanted to fight with me and keep me on my toes, and had real unpredictable behavior and real unpredictable emotions. And I had one boyfriend that he was pretty nuts. He was nuts. He would pull up to the house to pick me up, and here and there, just like maybe once a month or so, he'd pull up and I'd get in the car and he would just have tears streaming. Like, I'm not much of a crier to start with. So if dudes cry, I'm not going to look down on it, because why would I? Because I can probably understand why they're crying. So it's not, I don't look at it that way. But it was quite often that I got in his car and he would just have rivers coming down his face. And I'd get in the car and like look at him to greet him or whatever, because it'd be dark, right? Because it was always after dark. And his face would just be wet. And I remember one particular time, maybe the first time I saw it, probably, because I remember being so shocked. So this might have been the first time I'd seen him do this. When I got in the car and I said, so wait, did someone die? Oh my God, what's wrong? What? I didn't know what I did. I hadn't been around that whole lot. So like, I didn't know, because my father didn't cry and I didn't know what to do. And I'll never forget this. And I'm not making this up. He really looks at me and says, what's our status? I thought, what's our status? Jesus Christ, I just got in the car with you. Like, look at what I'm wearing. What do you mean, what's our status? Like, that threw me for a loop. And I thought, what's our status? Shit. And it's just stuff like that, and just tears. I was like, oh, fuck. And I didn't know what to do with that. But my dad didn't cry, he cried at funerals, but that's about it. But it wasn't the tears so much that they had in common, but the mood swings, just wild mood swings. And that, I kept those around. I kept those guys around because that's what I was used to. And then finally, you can only come to a head with this so many times. And then finally you say, you know what? What's the pattern here? What is the pattern? Okay, they're all doing this. They've all got this, and this quality. Why? Who else do I know that has been in my life that has that quality that I didn't pick? That which would be your caretaker, whoever raised you. It doesn't have to be your parents. It could be your grandparents, whatever, whoever was. Somebody who was influential in your early years, who really showed you what was going to be normal. Because children take their home life at that time anyway, while they're in it, they take whatever their home life is as normal, and they just accept it. That's what's so sad. That's like really heartbreaking. Okay, this is how it is, and the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old will just go with it. Okay, all right, and they just take it. It's really awful, because there's so much shit that so they take that and they carry it with them forever, and until they get enough insight, until they get sick and tired of it, and then sit down and ask and just like look into themselves and say, okay, do I want this to stop? And that's what I had to do, because I got sick and tired of the same shit. And I quit, accepting partners that had mood swings would show up to the house crying, were hostile, and stalked me on, online or in person or whatever and shit like that. And ones who would do something nice for me, or get me something nice, and then hold it over me and say, okay, well, you owe me, because Dad used to do that too. He every now and then he would insist on helping with something, and then right after that it was, okay, well, now don't think I'm gonna forget this, because you're gonna owe me, you little son of a bitch. It was like real mafia type shit. And I was like, what the hell? You pushed me until I said okay, and then, and I just had boyfriends that did that, like, up the wazoo, and like, I just thought, oh fuck, now I get it. They're the same. I forgive Dad all of these things, by the way. I don't harbor any anger or resentment towards him, not at all. Disappointed that he couldn't have been happier with his life, that he chose to be so miserable, but there's nothing I can do about that, so I just have to kind of relinquish it to the universe, I guess. But I still remember the good things, and that's good enough for me. So, but let me tell you, the narcissist, or the shitty partner will really show you some things about yourself that you need to look at, because you need to look at why you keep pulling them into your life. And it's some lesson that you haven't learned about yourself. It's something in you, typically you have the same wounds, and you're coming together because you're coming from the same pain point, but you're demonstrating it differently, but you have the same wounds. It's just amazing when you sit back and just really look at it and be like, you know what? Me and this asshole have a lot in common. And that's really, humbling in a way, because you realize that as much as you think you hate them, there's a lot of that. I'm not trying to say that y'all are just alike, and it equals you're the narcissist too, not that, but I just mean you're both hurting. It's just that both of you haven't seen it yet. I guess you just haven't noticed it yet, but for them, theirs is a lot huger, and they develop, serious mental issues to really cover that up and hide from it, because they can't deal with it. And it just, like, in them it goes crazy, and for you, you're just like struggling with it without understanding it. But that's why, like I said that thing I said about empaths, because empathic people especially will sit there and go on and on about, well, they just love me, they can't help themselves, I'm just so irresistible, and I feel their energy, and and that's all fine and well. I can feel it too, but I'm not, letting them suck my blood. You gotta get to know somebody, and really, if you can feel their energy so damn good, why are you letting them stick around in your life? I mean, just, it's one thing for them to just, like, come up to you and try to start talking to you and stuff like that, and you say, okay, go away, I don't have time for this. But it's different if they're in your life for like 6 or 9 or 10 or 14 months or years, and you say, oh, well, narcissists love me because, my vibes. They just love my vibes, and they just love, how it feels to be around me, and, they can feel my energy, and I can feel their energy, and that's why they stick around so long. No, there's something in you you're not looking at that's pulling them in, and they're bringing you insight one way or another, and you're ignoring it because you're using the empath thing as an excuse. And that's, I can't say I've called myself empathic. I don't like that word because it's so damn misused now. It's so misused, and I don't want to adopt a title for myself that, when I don't agree with the common usage of it. So I don't necessarily use that word. But I've seen people that really throw it around as an excuse for one thing or another, and that's not, you can't hide from that. So, but anyway, and there's narcissists that will do that too. Oh man, I'm empathic, so, and I've had that. Yeah, I can really feel your energy and blah blah blah. And then the thing is, some of them really can do it. There was one, let me tell you, I had one. I wasn't there. He was in a friend's car, like going down the road, going somewhere. He was getting a ride or something. I forgot what it was. And he was in my friend's car, and it was just the two of them. And they were at an intersection. She told me about this later. They were at an intersection, and he said, "Did a building burn down here at one point?" And she was shocked because she knew. She was like, "Yeah, there used to be a such and such building right there, and it burned the fuck down about 10 years ago." So he had something. he had something, and I believed it. Um, as much as he screwed me up, I believed it. So I knew that he had something about him, but it didn't matter. None of his powers mattered because he was um I mean, rough. He was rough, but that taught me. I lived in fear for a while after I got away from him, and then I quit living in fear, and I was like, nah, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to feel this way anymore. And I just decided I wasn't going to live in fear anymore. Your emotions. I hate to tell you this, but your emotions. It really is a decision you make, and it's a hard decision because you have to train yourself. But you have to take that first step to say, you know what, I'm not going to feel like this anymore. I'm not just not going to. And you just have to keep doing it. You just have to retrain your brain. And then finally you'll start have more, I don't want to say have more control over your emotions, but yeah. Because it's hard to do at first, especially with anger and things like that. And it's the same with depression too. People that are depressed will be like, well, I don't know, there's no reason to live, blah, blah, blah. And all they need is insight into themselves. And that depression, could very possibly just melt away. But they don't see their own beauty because they don't have any insight into themselves. And that's why they feel that way, in my humble opinion. Because there's other reasons. I'm sure Teal Swan has her own backstory for that. But, I can't compete with her. But that's just what I think. I think if people understood themselves better, there'd be so much to love. There would be so much to love that you wouldn't need to search outside of yourself for that. No more acceptance, looking for acceptance and shit. You just wouldn't have to do any of that. If you could just see, how important and special you really are. So, how long are we? 53 minutes. That's pretty good. I may leave it at that unless I think of another story I'd like to use as a really good example. Or you'll have somebody that you butt heads with over control, somebody like that who is trying to micromanage you. And, because the narcissist will do that too, micromanage, because they like I said, they're trying to make reality whatever they want it to be. They are willing, they're willing it to happen. They're trying their damnedest to make everybody's reality what they want, and especially yours. And they'll do whatever it takes to make you think things are a certain way, and they will manage, and they will try to control like the tiniest things to make it so. And the micromanaging, when they do that, and a lot of times it may very well be because they're trying to change something on the outside. When you're thinking to yourself, it's funny because you're trying to control this and this, when you really need to be looking at yourself. And when you hear yourself say that, you need to turn that onto yourself, not in a not like destroying yourself kind of way, not like going to war with yourself, not that, but I just mean the shit you're saying, the shit that you find yourself saying to the narcissist is shit you need to be saying to you, but not in a self-hating way or a self-sabotaging way. That was the word I was looking for. Not in a self-hating way. It's not that. You just need to realize that y'all are doing the same thing. That doesn't make you a narcissist, but what it means is that they're showing you what you need to work on, because they're going to do it. They're going to show you. Until you get them out of your life, they're going to show you. And the only way you're going to get them out of your life, and get them out permanently and never have them, in your lap again, is to realize what they're trying to teach you. Not consciously trying to teach you, this is all subconsciously, like, this is all happening, psychologically without y'all realizing it. But when they do shit that drives you nuts, you have to ask yourself, okay, where do I see this in myself? And that's where you start seeing, what you're doing that you think to yourself, and you'll feel ashamed too. You'll be ashamed of it. You'll be like, oh God, and you'll feel bad about it at first, but you don't have to feel that way. You don't have to feel that way. When they come into your life and do that shit to you and make you, if you want to have enough insight, you start thinking about it for yourself. You're like, oh damn, do I do that? That situation is not happening for you to feel bad about yourself. That's not why that's happening. That's not why it's there. It's there to show you, look, like, the universe or God or ancestors or whatever, whoever you want to say is in control here. Really, you're in control, but you know what I'm saying. Whoever's like bringing this to you to show you is wanting you to see that the things that are pissing you off and offending you are the things that are pissing off and offending, your higher self. Put it that way. And that your stuff, your habits and things that you're accusing them of is shit. You need to look at it in yourself. That's the part where it's a mirror, I don't want to use that phrase all the time because, like I say, it can be misconstrued, but that's the mirror thing. And, or a lot of narcissists will really, really, really get in your private business. They'll take your phone, they'll take your laptop, they'll follow you. I've been followed. They'll be sitting at your house when you pull up, when y'all are fighting and you don't want to talk to him, and he's sitting there anyway in his truck. And when you pull up to your own driveway, I've seen it. I've been there. I've seen it. I can see it in my mind now and see that black fucking tundra in my mind as we speak. And I thought I was going to fucking explode. I thought I was going to absolutely explode. What he was teaching me, without realizing it, without either of us realizing it, what that was supposed to teach me was to quit worrying about what the hell other people are doing and start worrying about what I'm doing. Because he was getting so far up my ass, I couldn't take a breath without him popping out of my mouth, to take a breath with me. I just made that up, so that's why it's weird. But I'm just imagining that. What's that movie? Is it Alien, where like the mouth opens up and then a little one comes out like that? So if both of y'all are doing that, he's showing you that that's what you need to look at. That's what you need to look at. And I did, and I worried about what other people were doing, and I not in a stalkerish way, but compared myself to other people and was always wondering what somebody else's progress was and if I could do that, and always looking out, to see what other people were doing, to see where I was falling short, and because I wasn't doing what so-and-so was doing. I thought, oh man, maybe I should be doing that. That person's going so much farther in life. Maybe I should be doing that. And I would like examine things like that and examine people. And instead, I should have just been focusing on myself. But I was worried so much about what was going on the outside. And he showed me that by being up my ass all the time. I just thought, God, worry about yourself. Oh. And when you do that, that's one of the biggest reasons why that person has come into your life is to make you have that moment. So this can go. There's a million examples. We've all seen it. So I could go on all day about this. I'm not going to. We're at an hour now, so I'm probably just gonna let it be. But those are some examples about what you can look for in yourself that somebody else, or the narcissist especially, will piss you off about, because that person is going to push you what makes them different from the rest of them is that the narcissist will push you until you're absolutely losing your mind, and until you just change as a person, for good or for bad. You feel like you're just changing and you're not even yourself anymore. And you're just acting crazy. You're reaching a boiling point where something needs to shift in you. Forget about them. You can't fix them, so forget it. But something needs to shift in you, and it's gonna have to happen soon, because you're about to explode. So when they do that, where they make you start acting in ways you've never acted before and stuff like that, because I did that too. I started acting crazy, because I just, like, my mind was just shattering. But it was shattering because it had to come back together, and it had to come back together in a different way, in a better way. And eventually it did. It just, much trial and tribulation it took, but eventually it did. And I just had to accept some things about myself that just needed to change. And it was just shit I was doing to pull them in. We were doing the same shit. And I thought, damn, he's got to quit doing that. Do I do that? And that's what you have to start doing. So just ask yourself. And then if they do something and you ask yourself if you're doing that and you really can't figure it out, then maybe you're not. It could be something else. And if you want to go one-on-one, we can talk about it and figure it out. It won't be any big deal. So, that I'm always available for that, of course. But, I tell you, these people, with as awful as they are, and we know they are, number one, they have a mental problem. So there is no fixing it. There's no understanding it. You could, but you don't waste your time with that, because you got to understand you. As soon as you start understanding you and why you're doing the shit you're doing, you'll quit attracting them so much, and it won't be the same anymore. It just won't be the same anymore. Once you figure yourself out, they'll just kind of like fall by the wayside. They'll still pop up here and there, like, wanting to get in your life or whatever, but just say no, because they're going to sniff people out anyway. They love to do that. But you're not going to be, stuck living with one, sharing the rent and shit like that. You're not going to get yourself stuck in a situation with them like that again, if you figure out what it is you're doing that attracts them. And it's, this shit they do can really shine some light onto that. So once you get past that, you just elevate yourself, because you understand yourself, you have insight on yourself, and you're like, oh, that's why I do what I do. Okay. So how can I change that? How can I start working on that and do better for myself? And of course, if you have children, how do I do better for them? You got to set an example for them, and you got to make the right decisions so that they have a good future. And you can't do all that for yourself or for them or for anybody if you're still screwing around attracting assholes, because you don't know what you're doing wrong. So once you get that cleared up, you can get better people around you and have better influences in your life, have better vibes in your life. And, and you'll start attracting people you want to attract, people who admire you, people who want to see you succeed and want to see you be your best and want to see you do the things you love and live a good life and to just be happy and do well and live well. And there are people out there that want to feel that way about you, but you can't attract them as long as you're still doing yourself wrong. And the narcissist is going to show up and put that in your face until you deal with it. So, yeah, and that's it. I mean, they can, yeah. So, it's past an hour. I'm going to leave it at that. That's kind of long. Thanks for sticking with me through my lives. And I'm going to leave the replay so, y'all can go back and watch it anytime. I don't delete stuff. And I hope that was insightful. I hope it was helpful. And, like I say, if you ever want to go one-on-one, my door is always open. I'm here. I'm always around, to answer questions or, whatever. If you want to go deeper, let's go deeper. Let's figure it out. There's always an answer. There's always a way to get out of it. There's always a way to figure it out. I don't ever want you to think that you're stuck or, that that's just how it's going to be or whatever. Because the more you tell yourself that, the more it's going to continue. the same old stories, just like my last live I did where I talked about, the stories you tell yourself. That is everything. So if you quit telling yourself those stories and just kind of like wipe your slate clean and say, okay, what do I need to look at? And that's when you start diving deep and getting some insight into yourself. And once you do that, you just elevate. And then once you do that, you start getting people that really care about you and genuinely want to see you do well in life. And everyone deserves that. As a human being, you deserve somebody who wants to see you do better and live better and be happy. So, but all of that is possible. You have more control than you think. And you certainly have more control than you've been taught. So I'm going to leave it at that. And thanks for watching.